My parents gave our entire inheritance to my golden child sister, then showed up 7 years later, demanding to see my kids, so I investigated their real motives, and what I discovered about their desperate scheme shocked everyone. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. 7 years ago, my parents Howard and Meredith Cruz made their choice crystal clear. When my grandmother died, leaving a $200,000 inheritance to be split between my sister Carmen and me, they convinced her to change the will. Every penny went to Carmen for her business venture that everyone knew was really funding her drug habit and her boyfriend's gambling debts. I was 26, married to James for 3 years, pregnant with our first child. We'd been saving for a house, planning carefully, doing everything right. My parents sat me down in their pristine living room and explained why I didn't deserve the money. Carmen needs it more, my mother said, her voice taking that familiar condescending tone. You have James, you have stability. Carmen is struggling. My father nodded along. Family takes care of family, Natalie. You've always been the responsible one. Carmen needs our help to get back on her feet. The money disappeared within 6 months. Carmen's business venture never materialized. Her boyfriend left anyway. My parents never acknowledged what happened, and when I brought it up, they acted like I was being greedy and selfish. James and I bought our house anyway. Through careful saving and sacrifice, we built our lives without them. I gave birth to Emma, then 3 years later to Sophie. My parents sent cards for birthdays and Christmas, but maintained distance. I thought they'd finally accepted the boundaries I'd set. Then last Tuesday, they showed up at my door unannounced. We want to meet our granddaughters, my mother announced, pushing past me into my entryway like she owned the place. We've given you enough space. It's time to heal this family. My father followed, already scanning my home with calculating eyes. Nice place you've got here. Must have cost quite a bit. Emma, now 7, peered around the corner. Sophie, 4, hid behind her sister. They'd never seen these strangers before. Girls, go play in your room, I said firmly. They scrambled upstairs, sensing tension. We have rights as grandparents, my mother continued. We've been patient long enough. James emerged from his home office, tension radiating from his shoulders. You can't just show up here demanding anything. This is between family, my father said dismissively. You wouldn't understand. That evening, after they finally left with promises to return soon, I made a decision that would change everything. I called our family therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, convinced she could help establish healthy boundaries, Natalie. Reconciliation is always possible with proper communication, Dr. Mitchell assured me during our phone consultation. Perhaps a mediated conversation could help everyone move forward. The therapy session went exactly as my parents planned. They arrived early. Charming Dr. Mitchell with stories about their difficult daughter who'd cut them off from their grandchildren over a simple misunderstanding about money. By the time James and I arrived, the narrative was set. Dr. Mitchell spoke about healing family wounds and the importance of grandparents in children's lives. My parents nodded along, playing their roles perfectly. When I tried to explain the inheritance manipulation, my mother's eyes filled with tears. We only wanted what was best for both our daughters. Carmen was in such a dark place. Money isn't worth destroying family relationships, my father added, his voice heavy with practiced sorrow. Dr. Mitchell turned to me with gentle disapproval. Natalie, perhaps it's time to consider forgiveness. Your parents clearly love their granddaughters and want to be involved. The session ended with Dr. Mitchell recommending supervised visits and gradual relationship building. My parents left victorious, having convinced a mental health professional that I was the unreasonable one. That night, I realized the system wouldn't protect my children from my parents' manipulation. I needed evidence of who they really were. I started documenting everything, every unexpected visit, every manipulative comment, every boundary violation. I photographed the expensive gifts they brought for the girls, designer clothes worth hundreds of dollars that they somehow afforded despite claiming financial hardship during the inheritance situation. Within 2 weeks, I had a folder full of evidence, photos, recorded conversations, written accounts of their behavior. I felt confident this would prove their manipulation to any authority figure. Then I discovered the folder was empty. James found me staring at the vacant filing cabinet in disbelief. Everything's gone, all the photos, the recordings, the written documentation. How is that possible? He asked, checking the cabinet locks. My mother had visited yesterday while I was at work, bringing lunch for the girls. James had been in back-to-back conference calls. She'd had 2 hours alone in the house with Emma and Sophie. When I called to confront her, she sounded genuinely confused. I don't know what you're talking about, sweetheart. Why would I take anything from your home? But that evening, Emma mentioned something that made my blood freeze. Grandma Meredith showed me how to open Daddy's office drawers. She said she was looking for paper to draw on. My 4-year-old daughter had unknowingly helped her grandmother steal evidence of her own manipulation. I realized my parents weren't just lucky, they were actively watching and preparing for my resistance. The next phase required allies. I reached out to my cousin Rachel, my Aunt Linda, and my Uncle Mark, people who knew our family history. Surely they'd remember the inheritance situation and support my concerns about my parents' sudden interest in the grandchildren. I arranged to meet Rachel for coffee, bringing new documentation I'd carefully hidden in multiple locations. I'm worried about Mom and Dad's motives, I explained, showing her photos of the expensive gifts and timeline of visits. This behavior started right after they learned James got promoted to senior partner at his law firm. Rachel listened patiently, occasionally nodding, but when I finished, her response crushed me. Natalie, I think you're overthinking this. Your parents have always talked about missing their granddaughters. Maybe they just want a relationship. What about the inheritance? You remember how they manipulated that situation? Rachel's expression grew uncomfortable. That was years ago. Carmen was really struggling. Sometimes families have to make difficult decisions. My conversation with Aunt Linda went even worse. She'd already spoken to my mother. Meredith called me crying yesterday. Linda said, she's heartbroken that you won't let them see Emma and Sophie. She said you've become paranoid and suspicious about everything. Did she mention why I'm suspicious? Did she tell you about the inheritance theft? Natalie, honey, that wasn't theft. That was a family decision made in Carmen's best interest. You've always been independent and successful. Carmen needed help. Uncle Mark was the final disappointment. Your parents are getting older, Natalie. How much time do they have left with their granddaughters? Don't you think you're being a little selfish? My parents had spent years crafting their narrative. To everyone else, they were loving grandparents being denied access by their difficult daughter. I was the villain in their story, but I wasn't giving up. If my family wouldn't listen, I'd find evidence so compelling that no one could ignore it. My parents attended St. Mary's Catholic Church, where they'd built a reputation as devoted parishioners. I needed to understand how they presented themselves to their community versus how they behaved privately. Sunday morning, I drove to their neighborhood and parked across from the church. James thought I was taking the girls to the park. Instead, I was conducting surveillance. My parents arrived precisely at 9:45, my father in his best suit, my mother wearing pearls. They greeted other parishioners warmly, especially families with young children. I watched my mother cooing over babies, playing with toddlers, presenting herself as a grandmother denied access to her own grandchildren. After service, they lingered in the parking lot. I crept closer, using other cars as cover, and activated the voice recording app on my phone. Such a tragedy about Natalie. My mother was telling Mrs. Henderson from down the street, she's become so paranoid and controlling, won't even let us meet our granddaughters properly. That's terrible, Meredith. Have you considered getting professional help? Sometimes therapy can help with these family situations. My father shook his head sadly. We've tried everything, even hired a family counselor. But Natalie refuses to cooperate. Her husband makes good money now, and she thinks she's too good for her family. Mrs. Henderson clucked sympathetically. Pride goes before a fall. Those poor little girls, missing out on their grandparents' love. I recorded 15 minutes of this performance before retreating to my car. My parents weren't just manipulating our family, they were building community support for their narrative. The next week, I took a more direct approach. My parents hosted a monthly dinner for their friend group, and I needed to witness their private behavior versus their public persona. I parked down the street and waited until guests arrived. The Hendersons, the Kowalskis, the Williamses, all families from their church circle. Once everyone was inside, I crept through their backyard and positioned myself near the kitchen window. The conversation inside was exactly what I expected. Natalie's always been difficult, my father was saying. Even as a child, she was stubborn and rebellious, never appreciated what we did for her. Carmen was always the sweet one, my mother added, so grateful for our help. Natalie acts like we committed some crime by helping her sister instead of her. Mrs. Kowalski asked, have you considered legal options? Don't grandparents have rights? My mother's voice dropped to a whisper. We've been researching that. There are attorneys who specialize in grandparents' rights cases. My blood turned ice cold. They weren't just seeking relationship, they were planning legal action. I pressed closer to the window, needing to hear their exact strategy. A motion sensor light suddenly blazed across the backyard. I dove behind their garden shed, heart hammering against my ribs. What was that? My father's voice carried through the kitchen. Footsteps approached the back door. I held my breath, pressed against the shed wall, as the porch light flicked on. Probably just a raccoon, someone said. They're always getting into garbage. But my father stepped outside. scanning the yard with suspicious eyes. He walked directly toward my hiding spot. 5 feet away, 3 feet, 2 feet. A car alarm went off in the front driveway. Someone had accidentally bumped a vehicle while leaving. My father turned and hurried toward the sound. I waited until he was inside before creeping back to my car, hands shaking so violently I could barely start the engine, but I'd heard enough. My parents were actively planning legal action to force access to my children. Their reconciliation attempts were just preparation for a custody battle. The next morning, I called attorney Janet Walsh, who specialized in family protection cases. Grandparents' rights laws vary by state, she explained, but they typically require proving that denial of access is harmful to the children or that the grandparents had an established relationship being wrongfully severed. They've never had a relationship with my daughters. We've been estranged for 7 years. That's actually in your favor. But if they can demonstrate that you're preventing relationship formation for unreasonable purposes, they might have grounds for supervised visitation. My stomach dropped. What constitutes unreasonable purposes? Mental instability, paranoid behavior, preventing normal family relationships without justification. They'd need evidence that you're acting irrationally. I hung up with growing dread. My parents weren't just building community support, they were building a legal case. Every boundary I set, every refusal to allow visits, every piece of evidence I gathered could be used to paint me as an unstable parent preventing normal grandparent relationships. 2 weeks later, my worst fears materialized. A process server appeared at my door with legal documents. My parents had filed for grandparents' visitation rights, claiming I was unreasonably denying access and causing emotional harm to the minor children by preventing normal family relationships. The petition painted me as a vindictive daughter who'd cut off loving grandparents over a minor family disagreement about financial matters. They claimed Emma and Sophie were being deprived of their heritage and extended family support system. Most damaging was their evidence, photos of the expensive gifts they'd tried to give the girls, which I'd rejected, documentation of their attempts to schedule visits which I'd refused, character references from church members who testified to their loving, nurturing nature with children. They'd even included Dr. Mitchell's notes from our therapy session, where she'd recommended supervised visits and described my resistance to family reconciliation. James found me staring at the documents in our kitchen. They've been planning this for months, I whispered. Every visit, every gift, every conversation, it was all building their case. Our attorney Janet Walsh was blunt during our emergency consultation. They have a surprisingly strong petition. Multiple witnesses to their attempts at relationship building, professional recommendations for contact. Your refusal to allow any access could be interpreted as unreasonable. What about the inheritance theft, the manipulation? That happened 7 years ago and doesn't directly relate to their grandparents' status. Unless you can prove they're currently dangerous to the children, family court tends to favor contact. I felt the walls closing in. My parents had maneuvered me into a trap where protecting my children made me look like the aggressor. But I refused to surrender. If they wanted to play legal games, I'd gather evidence so compelling that no court could ignore their true nature. I hired Marcus Webb, a private investigator, specializing in family fraud cases. His plan was more aggressive than anything I'd attempted. We need to document their real lifestyle versus what they claim in court. Marcus explained, they're portraying themselves as loving grandparents with limited means. Let's see if that's accurate. Marcus installed surveillance equipment near my parents' home and began following their daily activities. Within 3 days, he'd uncovered something significant. My parents were living far beyond their means: designer clothes, expensive restaurants, luxury car payments. The inheritance money Carmen had supposedly needed was funding my parents' lavish retirement. They spent approximately $40,000 last month. Marcus reported, high-end shopping, country club memberships, weekend trips to casino resorts. This doesn't match their claims of financial hardship. But the real breakthrough came when Marcus accessed their social media accounts using recovered passwords. My parents had been careless with their digital security, reusing old passwords across multiple platforms. Their private messages revealed everything. The lawyer says if we can prove Natalie is keeping the girls from us unreasonably, we can get court-ordered visitation. My mother had written to Carmen, then we'll have legal access to James' family. His law firm connections could be very useful for your situation. Carmen's response was equally damning. Perfect. I need character witnesses for my custody hearing with Derek's kids. Having lawyer-in-laws would definitely help my case. My father's messages to his brother revealed the real motivation. James makes partner-level money now. If we can establish relationship with the kids, we become family. No more worrying about retirement expenses. They weren't seeking grandparent relationships, they were positioning themselves to exploit James's professional connections and our financial stability. Marcus printed everything: financial records showing the inheritance money's real destination, social media evidence of their luxury lifestyle, private messages revealing their manipulative strategy. I felt victorious walking into court with this evidence. Finally, proof of their true character that no one could dismiss, but my parents' attorney was ready. Your Honor, this evidence was obtained through illegal hacking of my client's private accounts. She argued, regardless of content, it's inadmissible due to improper acquisition methods. Judge Martinez agreed. Mrs. Cruz, I'm troubled by the methods used to gather this evidence. Breaking into private social media accounts constitutes unauthorized access to computer systems. Janet tried to salvage the situation. Your Honor, the financial records show a pattern of deception obtained through the same illegal means. The opposing attorney interrupted. My client's financial privacy was violated by a private investigator hired by the petitioner's daughter. Everything I'd worked for evaporated in minutes. The judge ruled the evidence inadmissible and threatened sanctions if we'd violated computer fraud laws. Worse, my parents' attorney used my investigation against me. Your Honor, this demonstrates the exact paranoid behavior we've described. Mrs. Cruz hired a private investigator to hack into her parents' private accounts because they want to visit their granddaughters. This level of suspicion and illegal activity shows an unstable person making irrational decisions. Judge Martinez looked at me with obvious disapproval. Mrs. Cruz, this behavior is deeply concerning. Your parents have made reasonable requests for supervised visitation, and your response has been to hire investigators and break into their private communications. I walked out of court feeling completely defeated. My parents had maneuvered me into a position where every step I took to protect my children made me appear unstable and vindictive. That evening, James held me while I cried. They've thought of everything, I sobbed. Every move I make just proves their point that I'm paranoid and unreasonable. Maybe we should consider supervised visits, he said quietly, just to show the court we're willing to compromise. No, I said firmly, there has to be another way. I just need to be smarter than they are. But how do you fight opponents who've spent years planning their strategy while making you look like the aggressor for resisting? The answer came from an unexpected source: Emma, my 7-year-old daughter. Mommy, why did Grandma Meredith ask me so many questions about Daddy's work? She said during bedtime stories. She wanted to know about his office and his clients, and if we ever go to court with him. My blood ran cold. When did she ask you those questions, sweetheart? When she came for lunch, she said it was a secret game, and I shouldn't tell your daddy. My parents had been coaching my children during their unsupervised moments in my home. Emma's innocent revelation revealed their real strategy. They were gathering intelligence about James' law practice, possibly to exploit his professional connections or find leverage against us. Sophie, listening from her bed, added her own bombshell. Grandpa Howard said if we came to live with them sometimes, they'd buy us ponies and take us to Disney World every year. They were making promises to my children behind my back, building relationships based on manipulation and bribery. I finally understood that I'd been fighting the wrong battle. Instead of trying to prove my parents were bad people, I needed to document their specific behavior toward my children. The court wouldn't care about inheritance theft or lifestyle fraud, but they would care about adults who coached children to keep secrets and made inappropriate promises. The next phase of my investigation would focus on protecting Emma and Sophie from psychological manipulation. Using methods so careful and legal that no court could question my motives, I scheduled Emma and Sophie for individual sessions with Dr. Linda Martinez, a child psychologist who specialized in family manipulation cases. Unlike Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Martinez understood the subtle signs of adult manipulation in children. During Emma's first session, she used play therapy to help my daughter express her feelings about the grandparent visits. The lady who says she's my grandma told me special secrets, Emma explained while arranging toy figures. She said if I remember things about Daddy's work, she'd bring me presents, but I shouldn't tell Mommy and Daddy about our secret talks. Dr. Martinez documented everything carefully. Adult relatives coaching children to keep secrets was a major red flag for inappropriate relationship boundaries. Sophie's session revealed even more concerning behavior. The man said, if I was sad about not having grandparents, I should cry when the judge asks me questions. He said crying would help us all be a family. My parents weren't just manipulating the legal system, they were coaching my 4-year-old daughter to perform emotional distress for family court. Dr. Martinez's professional assessment was damning. Both children show signs of being coached by adults to provide specific responses and maintain inappropriate secrets. This constitutes psychological manipulation and is harmful to their emotional development. but I needed more evidence before returning to court. My parents would claim the children were confused or coached by me. I installed security cameras throughout my home, focusing on areas where my parents had unsupervised access to the girls when they requested their next lunch visit. I agreed, ensuring every moment was recorded. My mother arrived with expensive art supplies and immediately separated Emma from Sophie, taking Emma into the living room while directing Sophie to play upstairs. "Let's practice our special game," my mother said to Emma. Unaware of the hidden camera recording everything, "Remember what we talked about how Daddy helps people with legal problems?" Emma nodded eagerly, excited by the attention. "Good. Now, does Daddy ever talk about work at home? Does he mention client names or cases?" "Sometimes he talks to Mommy about his day," Emma said innocently. "Perfect. Can you remember any names he mentions? Or maybe you've seen papers with client information?" My 7-year-old daughter was being systematically pumped for information about James's confidential legal work. My mother was using Emma's natural desire for grandparent attention to exploit privileged attorney-client information. Meanwhile, upstairs, my father was having a different conversation with Sophie. "Do you want to come live with Grandpa and Grandma sometimes?" he asked, his voice artificially sweet. "We have a big house with a pool and lots of toys." "Mommy says we can't," Sophie replied. "Mommy's confused about some things," my father explained patiently. "Sometimes mommies make mistakes when they are scared, but judges can help fix mistakes. If a judge asks if you want to visit us, what should you say?" "I don't know," Sophie said quietly. "You should say yes, very loudly, so the judge knows you want to be with your grandparents, and if you feel sad about it, it's okay to cry. Crying shows the judge how much you want to see us." My father was coaching my 4-year-old to manipulate family court proceedings. When they prepared to leave, my mother had one final instruction for Emma. "Remember, this is our special secret game. Don't tell Mommy and Daddy about our talks, or they might get upset and not let us visit anymore." After they left, I reviewed the footage with James. His face went white as he watched my parents systematically manipulate our daughters. "They're fishing for information about my clients," he said, his voice tight with anger. "If Emma repeats client names or case details, it could violate attorney-client privilege. They could destroy my career." We immediately called Dr. Martinez and Attorney Walsh. The video evidence was unquestionable proof of inappropriate behavior toward minor children. "This changes everything," Walsh explained. "Coaching children to keep secrets from parents and manipulating them for information access demonstrates clear unfenced for unsupervised contact." But my parents weren't finished with their strategy. 3 days later, I received a call from Emma's school. "Mrs. Cruz, your parents are here requesting to pick up Emma for a doctor's appointment. They have written permission with your signature." My blood turned ice cold. "I never gave permission. Don't release Emma to anyone." I raced to the school, arriving to find my parents in the office arguing with the principal. "This is a misunderstanding," my mother was insisting. "Natalie asked us to take Emma to her dentist appointment. She must have forgotten. The forged note was in my handwriting. They'd somehow obtained samples of my signature and created convincing documentation. We cannot release students without verified parental consent," Principal Roberts explained firmly. Mrs. Cruz explicitly denied giving permission. My father's mask slipped slightly. "We have rights as grandparents. The court is already reviewing this situation." "Sir, that's not how school pickup procedures work," Principal Roberts replied. "Only authorized individuals on our emergency contact list can remove students during school hours." I arrived as my parents were leaving, their faces dark with anger at being thwarted. "This was an honest mistake," my mother said when she saw me. "We thought you'd asked us to help with Emma's appointment." "What appointment? Emma doesn't have any appointments scheduled." My father stepped forward. "Maybe you should keep better track of your daughter's medical needs. Could grandparents help with these responsibilities?" They drove away, leaving me shaking in the school parking lot. They attempted to remove my child from school using forged documents. Principal Roberts was appropriately alarmed. "Mrs. Cruz, we need to add a note to Emma and Sophie's files that these individuals are not authorized for pickup under any circumstances." That evening, I called Attorney Walsh with the school incident details. "Attempted unauthorized removal of minor children using falsified documents," she said grimly. "Combined with the recorded coaching behavior, we now have evidence of escalating dangerous conduct." But my parents had one final card to play. The next morning, I woke to find police officers at my door. "Mrs. Cruz, we have a report that you've been denying court-ordered visitation and making false accusations against family members," Officer Thompson explained. "Your parents filed a complaint claiming you're violating the pending custody agreement." "There is no custody agreement," I said, my heart racing. "The case is still pending. They also claim you've been stalking them and hired someone to break into their computer accounts." My parents were using the legal system as a weapon, filing false police reports to make me appear criminal. Officer Thompson looked uncomfortable. We have to investigate all reports, but this seems like a family court matter rather than criminal issue. However, if you're violating any court orders, there are no court orders to violate. I interrupted. Here's the case file. You can see the status yourself. After the officers left, I realized my parents' true strategy. They were overwhelming me with legal, professional, and criminal accusations, hoping to wear down my resistance through sheer exhaustion. But their desperation was also revealing their weakness. Each escalating move demonstrated the very behavior that made them unfit for grandparent access. The breakthrough came from Dr. Martinez's professional network. She referred me to Dr. Richard Foster, a forensic psychologist who specialized in family court evaluations and manipulation patterns. Your parents' behavior shows a textbook pattern of predatory grandparent syndrome, Dr. Foster explained after reviewing all the evidence. They're not seeking genuine relationships with the children, they're systematically exploiting family bonds for personal gain. Dr. Foster agreed to serve as an expert witness, providing professional analysis of the coaching behavior, inappropriate secret keeping, and escalating boundary violations. The attempted school pickup using forged documents is particularly concerning, he noted. This demonstrates willingness to use deception and fraud to access the children, which indicates potential kidnapping risk. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb had continued investigating legally, focusing on public records and financial documents. His discovery was devastating for my parents' court case. They've been receiving monthly payments from Carmen, he reported, $2,000 per month for the past 18 months. All deposited into your parents' account from her unemployment benefits. Carmen was still receiving financial support from the inheritance money, while my parents claimed poverty to justify their grandparents' rights petition. More importantly, Marcus found Carmen's criminal record. She'd been arrested twice for drug possession, and once for theft from her employer. My parents' struggling daughter who'd needed the inheritance was actively engaged in criminal behavior. Here's the connection, Marcus explained. Carmen's facing jail time for her latest theft charge. She needs character witnesses and family stability to convince the judge she has support systems. Your parents establishing legal relationship with your family creates extended family network for Carmen's defense. My parents weren't just seeking access to my children and James' professional connections, they were building support structure for Carmen's criminal defense strategy. Dr. Foster reviewed this information and made a professional recommendation that changed our entire approach. We need to request a full family psychological evaluation, he advised. Not just your parents' fitness for grandparent access, but comprehensive assessment of their motivations, relationship patterns, and potential risk factors. Attorney Walsh filed the motion immediately. Dr. Foster's credentials are impeccable. If he recommends psychological evaluation, most judges will order it. Judge Martinez agreed to the evaluation, appointing Dr. Foster as the neutral assessor. My parents couldn't refuse without appearing to hide something. The evaluation process was exhaustive. Individual psychological testing, family history interviews, and detailed analysis of all documented interactions with the children. Dr. Foster's report was comprehensive and damning. Howard and Meredith Cruz demonstrate narcissistic personality traits with manipulative behavior patterns spanning decades. His executive summary began, their current pursuit of grandparent access appears motivated by financial exploitation rather than genuine interest in child welfare. The report detailed specific findings. The inheritance manipulation showed systematic financial abuse of adult children for personal gain. The coaching behavior with Emma and Sophie indicated willingness to psychologically manipulate minor children for adult objectives. The attempted school pickup revealed escalating boundary violations with potential kidnapping implications. The false police reports demonstrated weaponization of legal systems against family members. Dr. Foster's professional recommendation was unequivocal. Howard and Meredith Cruz pose psychological and potentially physical risks to minor children. Emma and Sophie Cruz Bennett. No unsupervised contact should be permitted, and supervised contact should only occur with therapeutic oversight to prevent further manipulation. When we returned to court, my parents' attorney tried to challenge Dr. Foster's credentials and methodology. Your Honor, this evaluation seems biased toward the daughter's perspective, she argued. Dr. Foster only interviewed parties selected by the opposing counsel. Judge Martinez cut her off. Counselor, Dr. Foster interviewed your clients extensively. He reviewed evidence from multiple sources. His report meets all professional standards for family court evaluations. Dr. Foster testified as expert witness, explaining each finding in clinical detail. The respondents show classic patterns of instrumental relationship formation. He explained, they are not seeking emotional bonds with grandchildren, they are pursuing access to resources and social connections through family manipulation. My parents' attorney made one final attempt. Dr. Foster, isn't it possible that my clients simply want loving relationships with their granddaughters after years of estrangement? Dr. Foster's response was devastating. If that were true, we wouldn't see systematic coaching of children to extract confidential information about their father's legal practice. We wouldn't see attempts to remove children from school using forged documents. We wouldn't see financial exploitation patterns spanning multiple family relationships. Judge Martinez's ruling was swift and comprehensive. After reviewing all evidence and expert testimony, I find that Howard and Meredith Cruz have demonstrated patterns of manipulation, financial exploitation, and psychological abuse that make them unfit for unsupervised contact with minor children. The grandparents' rights petition was denied completely. Judge Martinez went further, issuing a restraining order, preventing my parents from contacting Emma, Sophie, or approaching their school. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued, the court finds evidence of attempted fraud in the forged school pickup documents and recommends the district attorney review this matter for potential criminal charges. My parents sat in stunned silence as their attorney explained they'd lost completely and now faced potential prosecution for document fraud. Outside the courthouse, James and I held each other in relieved exhaustion. It's over, he whispered, they can't hurt our family anymore. But the real victory came 3 weeks later. Dr. Martinez called with an update on Emma and Sophie's therapeutic progress. Both girls are showing remarkable improvement, she reported, without the pressure of maintaining adult secrets and confusion about family loyalty. They're developing much healthier emotional patterns. Emma had stopped asking about the secret games and was thriving in school without the stress of divided loyalties. Sophie was sleeping better and had stopped asking about ponies and Disney World promises. 6 months later, we received news that completed our victory. Carmen had been sentenced to 18 months in prison for her theft charges. Without my parents' expected character support and family stability evidence, her defense had collapsed. My parents had lost their court case, faced criminal investigation for fraud, and couldn't help Carmen avoid prison. Their elaborate manipulation strategy had backfired completely. Today, 2 years later, our family lives in peace. Emma and Sophie have thriving relationships with James' parents, who provide genuine grandparent love without manipulation or hidden agendas. My parents never attempted to appeal or contact us again. According to family members, they moved to another state, possibly to avoid the criminal investigation results. The inheritance money is long gone, spent on the luxury lifestyle they'd prioritized over authentic family relationships. Carmen completed her prison sentence but hasn't contacted any family members since her release. James and I built the family we'd always wanted, honest, protective, and free from the toxic manipulation that had defined my childhood. Sometimes protecting your children means accepting that not all family relationships are worth preserving. My parents taught me that blood relations don't automatically deserve access to the people you love most. The hardest lesson was learning that some family members will weaponize love itself, using your desire for connection against your better judgment. But the most important lesson was discovering that real family protects each other, supports each other's growth, and never asks children to keep secrets that serve adult agendas. Emma and Sophie will grow up knowing that family means safety, honesty, and unconditional love, not manipulation, exploitation, or conditional acceptance based on what you can provide. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.